As a fan of the One Piece manga, I find myself constantly disappointed by the anime adaptation. While I understand it has its own appeal, I just don't have the patience to sit through something so slowly paced that only bothers to look good every dozen episodes or so. This disappointment carries over to the majority of One Piece films, albeit for completely different reasons. There are two groups of One Piece movies that I have different sets of criticisms for. The earlier movies feel and look like TV filler arcs. They're simply straightforward stories about our favorite pirate crew going on light breezy adventures. I don't have any heavy criticisms against them, they just don't have many elements that are particularly strong or manage to hold my interest. With the exception of one film, but I'll circle back to that. The second and more recent group are distinguished from the first because the manga author for One Piece, Eiichiro Oda, has a hand in these movies. These movies look a lot flashier and are much more of an event upon release, but they have a common trend in their villains that I'm not very fond of. These villains tend to be the center of the marketing. Shiki, the Golden Lion, rival to the legendary pirates Roger and Whitebeard. Zephyr, the former Marine Admiral who trained a whole generation of soldiers. Douglas Bullet, a former Roger pirate who will succeed the late Pirate King, rumored to be stronger than Rayleigh in his prime. God, I hate Stampede. Now, these movies are perfectly okay for the most part, but there is one thing I don't like about them. They want me to care about the villains because they're ingrained into the big lore of One Piece. But paradoxically, they can't have any effect on that lore, because they and their movies are by nature not canon. Filler. Kaput. As a manga elitist, I can't bring myself to care for them on that front. I feel like the vast ocean of the Grand Line shrinks every time a story is directly connected with Roger or any of the other big names. At the stage the manga is currently at, whatever Luffy does will inevitably affect the world at large. So these filler movies could have been a nice chance just to have some comfy, low-stakes side adventures about wacky islands on the Grand Line. They may even help give the impression that the sea truly holds a vast, countless number of islands for the Straights to discover. This is what I enjoy about some of the recent TV specials. I can get behind a fun, breezy romp. But instead of expanding the world, these movies contract it. By making all the other movie villains connected to some other big-name character, you make the world of One Piece feel smaller. Like every adventure has to revolve around half a dozen characters or elements. They try to be more than what they really are and have varying degrees of success. Film Gold is the exception to this criticism. It feels a lot like the earlier One Piece movies, but with the razzle-dazzle of the newer ones. It just gives an interesting location, Straw Hat hijinks, and a bad guy who has his own identity. Well, kind of. He's just Doflamingo 2.0, but still. Strong World gets a lot of stuff right, and Shiki is a solid villain, but I don't think any elements in these first two films are truly exceptional. The next two movies commit a grave sin that should be a taboo for any One Piece adventure. They made the locations and settings boring and underdeveloped. Like seriously, every island in the New World has been some kind of crazy concept straight out of a fairy tale. Even Dressrosa, the most normal place by far, had toys and dwarves running around everywhere. The locations in Film Z and Stampede have nothing that stick out as memorable to me, and I don't think they even tried. But in spite of that, I really appreciate Film Z. Zephyr is a great character. Not because he's a former Marine Admiral, it's because he has a nice song. It's because the film took the time to actually develop some of his relationships. Because he's such a manly badass who went out fighting a system he lost faith in. They could have made Zephyr a former Vice Admiral and replaced Aokiji with someone else, and they could still have this gripping emotional narrative. I dare say Zephyr is the most emotionally potent element in any of these films. But overall, Z still isn't my favorite. It might have the best antagonist, but everywhere else it's no better or worse than the other movies in this category. I've been fairly negative to most of these films so far, but I wouldn't fault anyone for enjoying them. Heck, I enjoyed them. Even if they don't have everything I'm looking for, they can be a fun watch, and at their worst, they're harmlessly bland. Well, most of them anyway. I hate Stampede. It tore away some of my optimism for One Piece permanently. Because it's not a fun One Piece adventure. It's loud, aimless fan service. The first 30 minutes or so, when it's just about Luffy and the supernova, was alright. but by the end they crammed in so many characters who show up to do nothing at all while neglecting the main cast and the aforementioned supernova. Ask yourself, why did this group of characters fight Bullet at the end? It's not because there's some deep, thematic through line between them. That's something the actual story would want to do. These characters are fighting Bullet because they consistently place in the top of the popularity polls. This whole movie isn't interested in telling an engaging story or expanding the world of the Grand Line. It just wants an excuse to throw as many characters into the trailer as possible. A little piece of optimism died after thinking about Stampede, because this has the big man's stamp of approval on it. Now, I don't hate fan service if it's done tastefully. Stampede's fan service is aimless because all it does is flash the characters in front of your face long enough for you to notice them. I'm not a Hancock fan, but I think if I were, I would enjoy watching her team up with Luffy in the 3D2Y TV special a lot more than seeing her kick a giant monster for 30 seconds. There, her character has room to breathe. Her gag of being thirsty for Luffy goes beyond a single line of dialogue. She even gets her own fight. It's no masterpiece, but at least I understand and respect what it's trying to do. I can't stand the anime, but I enjoy Bartholomew saving Luffy from this crazy motherfucker in a filler arc than I do watching him say the line and stand in the background of this movie. I can apply that to every character in this film. I can watch 20 minutes of the crew bumming around on the Sunny, enjoy a Foxy Luffy team-up, have an absolute ball watching Robin killing it on the theater stage, I mean seriously killing it, or look at Nami in a swimsuit for the 6,000th time and think, that's neat. But 90 minutes of endless cameos disguised as a high-stakes anime battle is just exhausting. They didn't even try to give most of these characters interesting stuff to do. Did anyone really get a kick out of seeing Sabo and Smoker fight for 20 seconds? Or seeing Mihawk show up to slice a meteor only to immediately leave? The film never feels engaging because it never gives 99% of the characters something interesting to do. Maybe you just want to see cool action with One Piece characters. But even then, I feel like it would be a better spectacle and a more meaningful story if it focused on one group for longer than 10 minutes. I think I would have preferred if this movie stayed as a supernova competition / team-up story. You can still cram in all the action and fan service you want, expose these characters to fans who want to see more, and maybe devote enough time to some of them to have a small character arc, or a dynamic of some sort, or at least a funny joke, anything. Focusing on 11 characters is far more doable than 1,000. Seeing all of them team up in Stampede was pretty cool, and considering the directions of some of their characters in the main series, we'll probably never get to see it again. It should be an awesome piece of fan service. But because it's given no real weight in the story, and is just another set piece rushing by, it comes across as empty. So if none of these are my favorite, which One Piece movie do I think is the best? Well, I'll tell ya. It's humble, dramatic, and entirely unique among the One Piece films. Movie 6, Baron Omatsuri and the Mysterious Island. If you're a One Piece fan, I can't recommend this movie highly enough. If you want to go in spoiler free, now is your last chance. From here on out, I'll be spoiling a lot of the surprises. There will be a timestamp in the description waiting for you when you get back. What sets Omatsuri apart in 2 words is direction and animation. Every other One Piece movie has more or less adopted the style of the anime at the time they were made. It's why earlier movies look like filler arcs, and why Stampede is full of Dragon Ball shit. Baron Omatsuri is a bold departure from that standard. Director Mamoru Hosoda made sure to leave his signatures all over this movie, and the result is a One Piece adventure that feels distinct from anything that came before or since. That alone would make it noteworthy, but Omatsuri has other merits as well. Most people I show this movie to are turned off by its animation, but its appeal is not in how pretty or clean the screenshots are. It's how it moves. It's the feelings it gives off, the comedic timing, that sense of weight the characters have, or how willing it is to play with lighting in engaging ways. Simply put, you will see things in this film, types of shots that other One Piece movies don't even want to try. A lot of people say it looks cheap, but if you're not brain dead, you should understand there's nothing inherently wrong with minimalism in animation. In fact, anime was built on minimalism. Some media is so concerned with what they can throw on the screen, they don't stop to think if they should. This set of cuts from Chopper gets across the feeling of isolation and uncertainty perfectly fine. The way this shot-reverse shot of Usopp and Muchigoro is done perfectly matches the comedic timing. And when this film wants to look amazing, it will blow you away. I wouldn't say this is the best One Piece has ever looked animated. I can think of a handful of scenes that outdo Omatsuri at its best, but only Sakuga intense action scenes. Everything between the fights tends to get neglected in comparison. Omatsuri constantly gives me something visually interesting to look at, even if no punches are being thrown. There are two things I don't like about the look of this film, however. The first is Luffy doesn't stretch out as much as he should. Like, come on. Luffy will use any excuse to stretch his arms out at whatever interests him. Show me my stretchy boy. The second is the CGI. Specifically the giant goldfish in the beginning of the film. It just doesn't look very good. But that brings me to another thing I like about the visuals. The rest of the CGI. Let go of your preconceived notions of what CGI in anime looks like. Because it works in this film. Not only in small shots like this, but you might not even notice it unless you're keeping an eye out for it. One thing that Omatsuri actually lucked out on was its timing. This might be blasphemy to some people, but the Straw Hat dynamic was at its tightest when there were only 7 of them. And this film has no shortage of lovely and hilarious interactions between them. Now, I don't hate Jinbei, Frankie, or Brook. In fact, Brook is my favorite character. But whenever one of these newer movies comes out, someone always gets neglected. In fact, if you'll let me squeeze in another criticism for all the One Piece movies, I have to say I don't like how Zoro and Sanji get the fights every time. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji already get the lion's share of the action everywhere else, while Brook fans like myself are still waiting for our guy to get a satisfying developed one-on-one fight that doesn't end in one hit or in failure. I'm willing to take anything at this point. Just throw my favorite skeleton a dub, please Oda, please! Anyway, let's get back on track. The Straw Hats as they currently exist today are a cast that was built for long story arcs that take place over several dozens of chapters. An hour-and-a-half long movie only has so little time, so it has to be more careful with what it chooses to focus on. It's the same reason Stampede is a mess for cramming in too many characters. A smaller main cast is better suited for a short runtime. And these 7 in particular have the tightest chemistry due to a couple reasons. The first is Robin. Before Enies Lobby, there was still an air of independence to Robin. I still love the person Robin grew into, but as the most quiet and reserved of the cast, the easiest way to make her stand out is to have her work behind the others' backs on her own. Some fans call it the Miss All Sunday effect, calling back to when Robin was a villain, and a mysterious one at that. The second is that the East Blue crew are by far the most developed and iconic characters in the whole series, even 20 years later when the crew has doubled in size. Some even go as far as to call them the true main cast. This isn't unwarranted considering that when you look at who gets the most screen time post time skip, well after the first 9 Straw Hats are established, the East Blue crew still trumps the rest in the cast. Chopper might be left in the middle, but even he fills a niche of a younger, childlike character that no other Straw Hats have touched. God forbid, if I had to erase 3 of the Straw Hats from the story, I wouldn't pick any of these 7. The plot of Omatsuri isn't mind-blowing. In fact, many of you will probably find it familiar. The Baron is a man whose life was destroyed by loss, specifically the death of his crew. Now, he spends his days luring others into his island festival, just so he can feed them to the monstrous being Lily Carnation, all in hopes of perpetuating a fake crew that will never leave him alone again. Now, this description was deceptively written to make it sound familiar, but it's no coincidence that it's so easy for me to do that. The Baron's backstory is very similar conceptually to main series villain Gecko Moria, who would appear in the manga 3 years after this movie came out. Also, this scene where Luffy is in a tight spot and watches as his friends slowly disappear in front of him, eerily similar to Kuma's second encounter with the Straw Hats. And this final punch on the Baron, Now, I would hate to imply that Oda is a hack who ripped off Baron Omotsuri. Rather, I think what happened was the director and writer simply understood what dramatic elements would work well and fit naturally into One Piece's DNA. So naturally, that it'd be almost impossible for the main series to not do something similar after 20 years in publication. Now, all the movies incorporate the main series themes into them, but I find more often than not that it's simply repackaging earlier scenes and characters from the main series. This scene is just Luffy telling Rayleigh he doesn't want a boring adventure. This scene of Luffy punching Gaspard through his spikes is just like when Luffy punched Krieg through his spikes. Heck, even Zephyr, as much as I love him, is probably similar to what Aokiji was set up to become later on. It's entirely fair to say that because all these movies are side material that will likely be experienced after the main series, that Baron's incorporation of One Piece's ideas is effectively no different than the others. But I think the fact that Omotsuri came first gives it a sense of sincerity. It's okay if you don't agree with that, it's still my favorite One Piece movie. Thank you all for watching, like and subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you in the next one.